I thought the sharpest knife was my husband leaving, until I saw the words emergency custody on my boss's computer screen. I lost my career in a single morning and my children by the afternoon, silenced by their script that I was the unstable one. But the night I almost surrendered, a key from my dead aunt fell from an old book and unlocked an $80 million secret. My name is Mara Collins. I am 37 years old. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and until 10 o'clock this morning, I was the compliance manager at Kestrel Ridge Analytics. Now, I am just a statistic in a file. The vibration of my phone against the mahogany conference table sounded like a drill boring into my skull. I glanced down. It was the elementary school secretary. I picked up, ignoring the HR director sitting across from me. Mrs. Collins. We just received the emergency transfer forms signed by Mr. Hale. The children are being picked up now. My blood turned to ice. Transfer. What transfer I didn't sign? The HR director cleared her throat, sliding a thick manila envelope toward me across the glass table. Mara, please, we need to focus. Your access has been revoked due to a Level 3 security breach involving sensitive client data. Termination is effective immediately. I looked up, the phone still pressed to my ear. Standing behind the HR director was Veronica Slate, my boss, my mentor. She was wearing a cream silk blouse that likely cost more than my mortgage payment. Her face was a mask of practiced concern, but her eyes were dead. Mara, look at you, Veronica said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. You're shaking. Honestly. This is for the best. You seem so overwhelmed lately. You should go home and take care of your family. I did not pack a box. I did not say goodbye. I ran. I drove to the school, breaking every speed limit on High Street. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. When I screeched into the parking lot, I saw him. Evan, my husband of 12 years. He was standing by his sedan, clutching a stack of paperwork. But he was not alone. Veronica was there. She had beaten me there. She stood right beside him, her hand resting possessively on the small of his back. Her fingers splayed against his navy blazer, as if she were steering him. Evan, I screamed, slamming my car door. Where are the kids? What is she doing here? I barely took 2 steps before a uniformed deputy stepped in my path, blocking my view of my husband. Mara Collins, he asked, his hand resting near his belt. Yes, get out of my way. That is my husband. Those are my children. He thrust a folded stack of papers into my chest. You need to step back. Ma'am, this is an ex parte temporary restraining order granted by the family court judge 1 hour ago. You are to have no contact with Evan Hale or the minor children due to immediate safety concerns. Safety concerns, I choked out, the air leaving my lungs as if I had been punched. That is a lie. That is a... Step back, the deputy ordered, his voice hardening. I looked past his shoulder. Evan would not meet my eyes. He was looking at the ground, his shoulders hunched. Veronica, however, looked straight at me. She leaned in and whispered something to Evan, then guided him toward the car where I could see the tops of my children's heads in the back seat. I stood frozen on the asphalt as they drove away. My phone buzzed again. I looked down. My Kestrel Ridge email account asked for a password. I typed it in. Account locked. Contact administrator. I opened our family health insurance app. Dependents removed. They had done this in a single morning. This was not a fight. It was a demolition. I did not cry. Tears are for people who are surprised. I was not surprised anymore. I was analyzing. My brain, trained to find discrepancies in million-dollar ledgers, shifted into investigation mode. This was too clean, too fast. The timing was surgical. Then I remembered the company retreat last month. Veronica had been drunk on expensive wine, staring at the city skyline. She had looked at me with a strange intensity and said, "Legacy isn't given. Mara, It's about taking the things that should have been yours in the first place. I sat back in my SUV, the engine cold. I looked in the rearview mirror. The booster seat for my 5-year-old and the car seat for my 8-year-old were empty. The silence in the car was deafening. My phone lit up one last time. A text from Evan. Don't make this messy. To understand how I lost everything in a single day, I have to rewind the clock 10 months. It began when Kestrel Ridge Analytics secured the Apex contract. That victory propelled Veronica Slate into the vice president chair, and she immediately pulled me into her orbit with the gravitational force of a black hole. You are my right hand, Mara. She had told me over a celebratory lunch of kale salads and sparkling water. I need someone with your eye for detail. We are going to run this place. I felt seen. I felt valued. I did not realize I was being groomed for slaughter. Evan started attending the company mixers with me. Usually, he hated corporate networking, calling it a parade of hollow suits. But Veronica charmed him instantly. She laughed at his jokes. She asked about his architectural sketches. What started as networking turned into late nights where he would come home smelling of expensive perfume and scotch, claiming they were just brainstorming strategy for my benefit. Then came the soft manipulation, the kind that leaves no bruises but breaks your bones. I was drowning in the workload Veronica assigned me, forcing me to miss dinner or arrive late for soccer practice. Veronica would swoop in, armed with gifts I had not had time to buy. I remember coming home one Tuesday night, exhausted, to find my children playing with a brand new gaming console. Veronica dropped it off. Evan said, not looking up from his phone, she said she knew you were swamped and didn't want the kids to feel neglected. Neglected, I asked? Dropping my bag. I am working because she gave me 3 compliance audits due by tomorrow morning. Evan sighed, a sound that had become his default response to my existence. She is just trying to help. Mara, you are so ungrateful. She is a modern woman who knows how to balance things. Why can't you be more like that? The cracks in our marriage widened into canyons. Evan began to describe me as too rigid and always suspicious whenever I questioned Veronica's involvement in our lives. Meanwhile, Veronica played the role of the empathetic confidant, stroking his ego where I apparently failed, but my compliance brain could not turn off. 2 months ago, I flagged a red flag in the project logs, a manual adjustment to a payroll batch in the implementation division. It was small, just under the reporting threshold, but it lacked the required digital signature trail. I brought the file to Veronica's glass-walled office. It looks like someone bypassed the approval queue, I said, pointing to the line item. Veronica did not even look at the screen. She kept typing on her laptop. It is just a glitch. Mara. Accounting fixed it. Do not make waves over a rounding error. You know how the board hates unnecessary panic. I let it go, but the unease settled in my gut like lead. That same week, I was cleaning out some old boxes in the garage and found a photo album belonging to my mother. I stopped at a picture of my Aunt Louisa Carver. Louisa was the black sheep of our family, the only one who had left Ohio for the rugged West decades ago. She had cut ties with everyone, claiming she hated the plastic smiles of our relatives. I pulled a loose photograph from the back of the album. It was torn, the corner jagged. It showed my mother, Aunt Louisa, and a third young woman standing in the background. The third woman was blurry, but the posture was unmistakable, the tilt of the chin, the cold, assessing stare. It looked exactly like a 20-year-old Veronica Slate. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself the stress was making me see ghosts. But then Veronica started texting Evan about things that had nothing to do with work. She suggested a new private school for our son. She recommended a therapist for Evan's stifled creativity. She thinks you are stressed, Mara. Evan told me one evening, his voice oddly detached. She offered to connect you with her legal team if you ever needed to. You know, restructure your assets? She says you carry too much. I froze. Restructure my assets. That was the moment the final piece clicked into place. This was not an affair. An affair is a crime of passion. This was a corporate acquisition. Veronica did not just want to sleep with my husband. She was auditing my life, identifying the weak points, and preparing for a hostile takeover. She wanted my husband, my children, and my home to fill the void where her soul should have been. And I had been too busy being a good employee to see her signing the paperwork. The termination meeting was a masterclass in bureaucratic violence. The HR director did not look me in the eye as she read from the paper. Violation of data privacy protocols. Unauthorized export of client financials to an external drive. I slammed my hand on the table. That is a lie. I don't even have write access to those servers. Only an admin-level user could move those files. The logs show your credentials were used. Mara, she replied, closing the folder. We are waiving the gross misconduct lawsuit if you sign the non-disclosure agreement today. I walked out without signing a thing. I knew exactly what had happened. Someone had impersonated me. And in a company with security as tight as Kestrel Ridge, only 2 people had the clearance to ghost a user, the chief information officer and the vice president. Veronica. I drove straight to the office of Dana Klein, the sharpest family law attorney in Columbus. I expected to be the plaintiff. I expected to be the one filing for divorce. Dana looked at the docket on her screen and took off her glasses. I am sorry, Mara, Dana said, her voice low. Evan beat you to it. He filed an emergency motion this morning at 9 o'clock. On what grounds, I asked. He abandoned us. He is claiming you are suffering from acute mental instability following a breakdown at work. He cites your firing today as proof of volatile behavior. He has been granted temporary sole custody pending a hearing. The room spun. They used the firing they orchestrated to steal my children. That night, I tracked Evan's location through a shared ride-sharing app account he had forgotten to unlink. He was at a luxury apartment complex downtown. I found a photo of the building on a public Instagram feed tagged with the location. In the background of a stranger's selfie, through the glass lobby doors, I saw them. Evan was carrying a box. Veronica was standing behind him, pointing at the elevator. This was not just an affair. It was a relocation. 2 days later, Veronica requested a meeting. She chose a neutral ground, a crowded coffee shop on 3rd Avenue. She wore a white suit, looking every inch the victorious executive. Sign the settlement. Mara, she said, sliding a document across the sticky table. It is generous. If you agree to the uncontested divorce and the mental health evaluation, Evan will agree to supervised visitation on weekends. Don't drag this out. I stared at her. My hands were trembling under the table, but I forced my voice to be steady. I had to play the broken victim she expected. I want to see my kids, I whispered, looking down. Then I snapped my eyes up to hers. The wording in the custody motion about my histrionic episodes. That is legal phrasing. Did Evan write that? Or did you? Veronica's left eye twitched, a micro-expression of annoyance. Evan is very articulate when he is protecting his children, she said. But the delay in her answer told me everything. I left the coffee shop and went to the bank, only to find my card declined at the ATM. I pulled up the mobile app. Our joint savings account, which held the down payment for our future house, was empty. I scrolled through the transaction history. $9,900 withdrawn on Monday. $9,900 withdrawn on Tuesday. I laughed, a harsh, dry sound. It was called structuring. Withdrawals just under the $10,000 federal reporting threshold to avoid triggering a currency transaction report. It was a money laundering technique. It was exactly the kind of compliance violation I used to catch people doing. Evan did not know how to do this. Veronica did. My phone pinged. It was a signal message from a junior analyst at Kestrel Ridge, a girl I had trained. Mara, I shouldn't be telling you this, but I saw a remote login on your terminal at 2 a.m. the night before you were fired. The IP address came from the executive VPN pool. The logs were wiped an hour ago, but I took a screenshot. I saved the image immediately. It was the first crack in their armor. Then, the voicemail came. I sat on the floor of my empty living room and pressed play. My 8-year-old daughter's voice filled the silence. "Mommy, Daddy says you are sick. Ms. Veronica says you need to rest and we can't bother you. But I miss you. Please get better." I did not cry. The coldness that washed over me was absolute. They were not just taking my children, they were rewriting my existence in their memories. They were painting me as the villain in my own life story. I called Dana. The judge set the emergency hearing for 12 days from now. Dana said, "But, Mara, listen to me. You are fighting a man with a war chest and a woman who has written a script for how this plays out. They have the money and the narrative. We need hard evidence, or you will lose." I moved into a sublet studio on the south side of town that smelled of stale cigarette smoke and desperation. It was all I could afford after my accounts were frozen. The humiliation was not sleeping on a mattress on the floor. The humiliation was the nightly video call with my children. I sat in front of my laptop, forcing a smile while a court-appointed monitor listened on the other end of the line. "Mommy, when are you coming home?" my 5-year-old asked, holding up a drawing. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Soon, baby. Mommy is just fixing some things at work." The monitor cut in, her voice flat. "Mrs. Collins, please refrain from discussing the case or making promises you cannot keep." I wanted to scream, but I nodded. I was learning that anger was a luxury I could not afford. Later that night, I saw the notification. Veronica had posted an article on LinkedIn. It was titled, "The Hidden Cost of Ambition, Prioritizing Mental Health and Protecting Our Children." She wrote about the tragedy of watching a brilliant colleague collapse under pressure and the moral duty to step in. She did not name me, but she did not have to. The comments were full of people praising her compassion. I called Dana, my thumb hovering over the reply button. "Do not do it, Mara," Dana warned. "If you argue, you look unstable. If you scream, you prove them right. Silence is your only shield right now." So I channeled my rage into the only thing I had left: data. I had managed to download a cache of my personal files before my laptop was wiped, including some old expense reports I had saved for tax purposes. I sat on the floor, surrounded by printed spreadsheets, highlighting every inconsistency. That was when I found it. A series of monthly payments for strategic consulting billed to a vendor called Red Brick Solutions, LLC. Veronica had signed off on every single invoice. The amounts were always just below $5,000, processed as discretionary spending. I looked up the business registration for Red Brick Solutions. My heart hammered against my ribs. The registered address was not an office park. It was the address of the luxury apartment building downtown. The same building where Evan was now living. I felt sick. Kestrel Ridge Analytics was paying for my husband's new apartment. They were stealing from the company to fund their affair. My phone rang. It was Evan. "Mara," he said, his voice soft, the way it used to be before the promotion. "Please, can we just stop fighting? I hate doing this to you. Just sign the agreement. We can work out a better visitation schedule later." I pressed the record button on my burner phone. "I cannot sign a lie. Evan, why are you doing this?" "I am doing what is best for the kids," he recited, his tone shifting into something robotic. "You are not well." "I know about Red Brick Solutions," I said quietly. There was a silence on the line, so heavy it felt physical. "Veronica said if you don't sign, she will—" He stopped abruptly. "She will— what?" "Evan." I pressed. "What will she do?" "Just sign the papers, Mara," he snapped, and hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Veronica. It was a photo of my children playing in a park I did not recognize. They were smiling, but they looked small and far away. The caption read, "They are thriving. Don't ruin it." I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall with a crack. I curled into a ball on the mattress, shaking with a rage so pure it felt like it could burn the building down. I would not let them win. I would not let her buy my children with stolen money. I heard the mail slot clatter. I walked over and picked up a single thick envelope lying on the dusty carpet. The return address was from a law firm in Boise, Idaho. Inside was a formal notice of death for Louisa Carver. There was no sympathy card, just a legal document and a handwritten note on yellow legal pad paper, clipped to the front. The handwriting was jagged and rushed. "Come get what is yours. Do not go alone." I looked at the date on the note. She had written it 3 days before she died. I spent the last of my available credit on a one-way ticket to Boise, Idaho. The funeral was sparse, just a few locals in flannel shirts standing around a freshly dug grave in a cemetery that smelled of pine needles and rain. I stood at the back, shivering in my thin coat, feeling like an intruder in my own family history. When the service ended, an older man approached me. He wore a worn leather jacket and walked with a limp. "You have her eyes," he said, his voice gravelly. "I am Noah Red. Louisa appointed me executor." He did not offer condolences. Instead, he motioned for me to follow him to a rusted pickup truck parked by the gate. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a heavy iron key and a weathered leather notebook. She gave me specific instructions. Noah said, handing them to me. She said, "If Mara comes here just to visit, give her the house keys. But if she comes here looking like she has been robbed of her children, give her this." My breath caught in my throat. How did she know Louisa knew a lot of things people thought were buried? Noah replied, "Follow me to the bank." The safety deposit box was long and narrow. I sat in the private viewing room, the fluorescent light humming overhead. Inside, there was no jewelry, no cash, just a silver USB drive, a thick file folder labeled "The Trust," and a photograph. I picked up the photo. It was the original of the torn picture I had found in my mother's album. But this time, the corner wasn't missing. Louisa was laughing, her arm around a young woman with dark, hungry eyes. It was Veronica, but on the back, in Louisa's scrawl, it didn't say Veronica Slate. It said Louisa and Vanessa Sallow, 2005. Vanessa Sallow. I whispered. That was her name before she reinvented herself, Noah said from the doorway. Before she tried to sue your aunt for half her portfolio. I opened the file folder. My eyes widened as I scanned the documents. Louisa wasn't just a recluse living in a cabin. She was the silent majority shareholder in a logistics empire that spanned the Pacific Northwest. The numbers on the balance sheet made me dizzy. $80 million, Noah said calmly. It is wrapped in a blind trust. Louisa set it up so no one could touch it. Not even you. Unless... He flipped to page 42. Clause 7, protective activation. The trust activates only under specific distress conditions. Noah explained. If the beneficiary is subject to coercive litigation, divorce under duress, or custodial interference, the assets unlock, but not as cash. They unlock as a war chest. The trust pays for top-tier legal defense, forensic accounting, and private security. It effectively gives you an unlimited budget to fight anyone trying to hurt you. The room spun. Veronica knew. Of course she knew. She isn't just trying to take Evan. I realized, my voice trembling. She is trying to force me into a position where I am destitute. If I am broken. If I sign away my rights. If I admit to being unstable. I disqualify myself from the trust. She wants to control me because I am the only thing standing between her and this money. Noah nodded grimly. She needs you desperate. She needs you to fold. He handed me a smaller, sealed envelope. Read this. I tore it open. Louisa's handwriting was shaky, written near the end. Veronica will think it is just about the money. She is arrogant that way, but the money is just the bait. The truth is, the list. I plugged the USB drive into the secure laptop provided by the bank. A password prompt appeared. I typed in the only thing that made sense. Vanessa. The folder opened. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding against my ribs. The files were not random. They were a dossier, Kestrel Ridge routing numbers. Slate transfers 2020, 2024. Custody playbook draft. And at the bottom, a video file simply titled For Mara. I clicked play. The screen filled with my aunt's face, pale and gaunt, but her eyes were burning with a fierce, cold intelligence. "Hello, Mara," she rasped. "If you are watching this, she has already made her move. She has taken your husband. She has taken your job. Now, stop crying. We are going to take everything back. I returned to Columbus not as a broken woman, but as a CEO of my own war room. The first check I wrote from the trust account was a retainer for a team that would make Kestrel Ridge's legal department look like amateurs. I kept Dana Klein for the family court battle, but I added Robert Vance, a ruthless labor attorney, and Silas, a forensic accountant who had spent 20 years tracking cartel money. We set up operations in a rented office suite with swept lines and encrypted servers. There was no crying here. There was only strategy. Silas projected the contents of Louisa's USB drive onto the whiteboard. The web of deceit was intricate, but fragile. "Look at this," Silas said, pointing to a recurring transfer. Kestrel Ridge pays vendor fees to a company called Red Brick Solutions. The money sits there for 48 hours, then routes to an offshore account in the Caymans before landing back in a domestic LLC controlled by Veronica. She isn't just stealing clients. Mara, she is embezzling operating capital. And here is her digital signature authorizing every batch. I nodded, feeling a cold satisfaction. But the next file Silas opened made the air leave the room. It was an internal email draft from Veronica's work account, dated 6 months ago. The subject line was Hail Custody Strategy. Attached was a document titled Motion for Emergency Custody. I read the text. It was identical to the motion Evan had filed against me last week. Every accusation, every twisted phrase about my mental state had been written by my boss half a year ago. She didn't just encourage him, I said, my voice barely a whisper. She scripted him. This was a product launch. "We have the motive and the method," Dana said, tapping her pen on the table. "Now we need to secure the evidence before they realize we are hunting them." We built a power map of the company. We identified the weak link in the chain, Greg, a mid-level system administrator who I remembered seeing at Veronica's house parties. He was the only one with the access rights to plant the false data breach on my computer. We need them to lower their shields. I told the team, if they think I am fighting, they will scrub the servers. I need to look defeated. I picked up my burner phone and typed a text to Evan. I forced my fingers to type the words that tasted like ash in my mouth. "Evan, I can't do this anymore. I am out of money and I am tired. I just want to see the kids. Can we meet to talk about a schedule? I will sign whatever you want." I hit send. "Perfect," Dana said. "Now, while they are popping champagne, we drop the hammer." At exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Robert filed a formal whistleblower complaint with the State Labor Board, alleging retaliatory termination due to the payroll irregularities I had flagged months ago. "This is the trap," Robert explained as the confirmation email pinged. "This complaint triggers an automatic litigation hold, legally. Kestrel Ridge cannot delete, alter, or move a single byte of data from this moment forward. If Greg tries to wipe the logs now, he goes to federal prison." Simultaneously, the trust's legal arm sent a demand letter to the bank hosting the Red Brick Solutions account. "We didn't claim the money. We flagged it as disputed funds subject to active fraud investigation." Banks are terrified of liability. Within 10 minutes, Silas confirmed the account was frozen. The money Evan was using to pay the rent on his new apartment, the money Veronica was using to buy my children's affection, was gone. "We could leak the embezzlement to the press," Robert suggested. "It would destroy her credibility before court." "No," I said firmly. "My children share a last name with their father. If this hits the news, they will be the ones bullied at recess. We do not use the kids as weapons. We do not touch them. We use the truth to cut the head off the snake." I looked at the calendar. The custody hearing was in 4 days. I imagined Evan trying to pay for dinner tonight and having his card declined. I imagined the panic in Veronica's eyes when she realized she couldn't access her stolen fortune. Dana looked at me, her expression serious. You know, when we walk into that courtroom, they are going to hate you. They will paint you as vindictive. I gathered the files into a neat stack. I don't need them to like me. Dana, I said, looking her dead in the eye. I just need them to be unable to deny me. The dominoes began to fall on a Tuesday morning, and the sound was music to my ears. It started with a frantic call from Evan. I let it go to voicemail, then watched the transcription appear on my screen. Mara, I am at the gas station and my card is declined. Both cards. The guy is staring at me. Did you cancel them? Call me back. I did not call him back. I simply forwarded the voicemail to Dana with a note. Petitioner reports financial distress due to frozen assets under investigation. Veronica cracked 2 hours later. She sent an email to my personal address, copying her lawyer, threatening a defamation suit regarding the baseless rumors about her finances. But in her anger, she made a fatal error. She referenced a specific motion regarding my mental health evaluation that had been filed under seal in family court only 3 hours prior. Dana called me immediately. She just quoted a sealed document. Mara. She is not a party to this case. Evan must be feeding her the legal filings, or she is accessing them herself. That is a breach of confidentiality. While Veronica was busy making threats, our forensic team struck gold. Because of the litigation hold Robert had triggered, the IT department at Kestrel Ridge had been forced to recover the deleted backup tapes. Silas projected the log onto the wall of our war room. Here it is, Silas said, pointing to the glowing text. The night before you were fired, your account was accessed at 3 a.m, but look at the MAC address. It matches the workstation of Gregory Hines, the system administrator. And 10 minutes later, Gregory's station received an encrypted file transfer from Veronica's laptop. We had the smoking gun, but we needed the motive to be undeniable. I opened the file from Aunt Louisa's USB drive labeled Custody Playbook. It was chilling. It was a checklist. Phase 1, isolate target from financial resources. Phase 2, preemptive filing of emergency custody to establish status quo. Phase 3, digital fabrication of instability. They had checked off every single box. I texted Evan again. I will meet you at the park. Just us. 10 minutes. He was waiting on a bench, looking pale and exhausted. He wore the same shirt he had on yesterday. The glamour of his new life was fading as quickly as his bank balance. I sat down, keeping my distance, the recorder in my purse humming silently. Why, Evan? I asked softy. Why the restraining order? You know I would never hurt them. He put his head in his hands. I know. But Veronica said, she said it was the only way to make sure they didn't see you fall apart. She said we had to be aggressive to protect them from your stress. She wrote the statement for me. She said if I didn't file it, the court might give you full custody because mothers always win. So you lied to a judge because she told you to. I was scared. Mara, she made it sound like you were dangerous. I had what I needed. While I was at the park, Robert fired our next shot. He sent an anonymous package to the Kestrel Ridge Ethics Board. It contained the evidence of the ghost vendor payments and the digital signature logs. The impact was immediate. By 4 p.m, sources inside the company confirmed that corporate security had escorted Veronica out of the building pending an internal audit. Her signing privileges were revoked, cornered. Veronica lashed out. She filed a motion to extend the restraining order, claiming I was now stalking her via digital means and harassing her partner. Dana smiled when she saw the filing. She just walked into a bear trap. By claiming harassment, she has made her communication history with Evan relevant to the case. We are demanding full discovery of their texts. The judge agreed. Veronica had to turn over her phone records. Late that night, we found it, buried in a thread from 2 weeks ago, right before Evan filed for custody, was a text from Veronica to Evan. Stop hesitating. If she doesn't sign the agreement, you will lose the kids. I have the lawyers, I have the money, and I have the plan. And you know what I can do to people who don't follow the plan." I stared at the screen. The blood drained from my face. This was not a love affair. Evan was a hostage. Veronica did not love him. She was acquiring him, and she was using terror to keep him in line. "This is not a divorce case anymore," I said, my voice cold. "This is a rescue mission." I looked at the custody playbook file again. This was a system she had perfected, and for the first time in her life, she had used it on someone who had the key to dismantle it. Veronica launched a scorched earth campaign to isolate me. It started with whispered rumors at the school gates and vague, concerned Facebook posts about protecting children from unstable environments that never mentioned my name but pointed every finger at me. Friends I had known for years stopped returning my calls. I was radioactive. Dana, my lawyer, remained unimpressed. She filed a motion demanding an evidentiary hearing on the source of the allegations. "We are arguing that the petitioner, Evan Hale, has no independent knowledge of these claims." Dana told the judge during a conference call, "Every single accusation originates from a third party who is currently under internal investigation for fraud." Then came the discovery that made the courtroom gasp. The expert psychological report Evan had submitted, declaring me unfit, was signed by a Dr. Aris. My forensic investigator did a background check. Dr. Aris had received a $5,000 consulting fee from a shell company linked to Veronica 2 days before the report was dated. He had never met me. He had never interviewed me. He had diagnosed me based entirely on notes provided by Veronica. Kestrel Ridge Analytics saw the writing on the wall. They reached out to Robert, my labor attorney, offering a settlement. "They are offering 1 year of salary and a neutral reference if you drop the whistleblower complaint." Robert told me, "No," I said immediately. "They want to bury the evidence of the payroll fraud. I want a public tribunal. I want everything regarding Veronica Slate's tenure read into the record." Evan was beginning to crack. With his credit cards frozen and Veronica facing corporate exile, the luxury lifestyle he had been promised was evaporating. I saw him at a distance when he dropped off legal paperwork. He looked thinner, his eyes darting around nervously. He knew he was just a tool she was using to pry open a vault, but his pride was too swollen to let him admit he had made a mistake. I went back to the files from Aunt Louisa. I needed to understand the depth of this obsession. I watched the video from Louisa again. She explained the history. 20 years ago, under the name Vanessa Sallow, Veronica had been Louisa's protege in a real estate venture. Vanessa had tried to swindle Louisa out of a warehouse deal, but Louisa had caught her and cut her out, leaving Vanessa with nothing. The $80 million in the trust was not just money to Veronica. It was the score she felt she was owed. She believed she was the rightful heir to Louisa's empire, and I was just an obstacle to be removed. Then, Veronica made her fatal mistake. Desperate to get to the money before the legal walls closed in, she contacted Noah Red directly. She claimed to be a silent partner and demanded access to the trust records as a creditor. Noah called me, his voice grimly satisfied. She walked right into it. The trust has a specific exclusion clause. Any potential beneficiary or claimant who has legally changed their name to conceal a prior financial crime is automatically disqualified and reported to the authorities. By identifying herself to me, she just triggered a fraud alert with the IRS. Veronica realized the trap too late. Her rage spilled over. My phone buzzed late at night. A text from a number I did not recognize, but the voice was unmistakable. "You think you are clever. You are just a placeholder. Keep pushing, and you will never see those kids in peace again. I will bury you under so much litigation you will beg to die." I did not reply. I simply screenshotted the message and forwarded it to Dana. "This is witness intimidation," Dana said. And it proves she is the one driving the custody battle, not Evan. The next morning, we stood before the family court judge. Dana presented the text message and the proof of the falsified psychological report. The judge looked at Evan, who was shaking in his seat. Then he looked at the empty chair where Veronica usually sat in the gallery. "Mr. Hale," the judge said, his voice stern, "I am gravely concerned by the influence of third parties in this matter. I am issuing an immediate modification to the temporary order." He banged his gavel. "Mrs. Collins is granted unsupervised visitation 3 days a week, effective immediately. Furthermore, Ms. Veronica Slate is hereby restrained from being within 500 feet of the minor children or being present during any custodial exchange. If she shows up, she will be arrested." I looked at Evan. He did not look angry. He looked relieved. The day of the custody hearing, the courtroom felt less like a hall of justice and more like a gladiatorial arena. Veronica arrived first. She wore a tailored navy suit that screamed authority, her hair pulled back in a severe, perfect bun. She walked with the confidence of a woman who had already bought the verdict. Evan trailed behind her, looking gray and diminished, like a shadow that had lost its object. I walked in with Dana and a paralegal who carried a single, heavy banker's box and a sealed evidence bag containing the silver USB drive. I did not look at Evan. I did not look at Veronica. I looked at the judge. Dana stood up to open our case. She did not use flowery language. She did not plead for sympathy. "Your Honor," Dana said, her voice cutting through the stale air. "This case is not about the fitness of a mother. It is about the execution of a corporate demolition plan applied to a private family." She signaled to the paralegal, who set up a large display board. "We are looking at a timeline," Dana continued, pointing to the chart. At 3 a.m. on the 12th, Mara Collins's work account was hijacked. At 9 a.m, she was fired for that breach. At 1 p.m, Mr. Hale filed for emergency custody, citing her unemployment as a stressor. The prosecution would have you believe this is a tragic coincidence. We are here to prove it is a script. The opposing counsel objected, but the judge waved him down. "I want to see where this goes." Dana pulled a document from the box. "This is an internal email recovered from the Kestrel Ridge server, sent from Veronica Slate to the head of Human Resources 2 days before the firing. I would like to read it into the record." The room went silent. Subject: Collins' termination. Body: "We need her out before the custody motion is filed. If she is still employed, she has resources. We need to reduce her credibility immediately." A collective gasp swept through the gallery. The judge's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing at Veronica. She shifted in her seat, her jaw tight. Dana called Evan to the stand. He looked like he was about to be sick. "Mr. Hale," Dana asked, holding up his original custody filing. "You stated in this sworn affidavit that my client exhibited histrionic patterns indicative of a dissociative break. That is very specific clinical language. Did you write that Evan gripped the railing of the witness box?" I wrote it. I was describing what I saw." Dana projected a file onto the screen. It was the custody playbook document from the USB drive. "Then can you explain why your affidavit matches this document word for word? A document created by Veronica Slate 6 months ago." Evan stammered, looking helplessly at Veronica. "She was helping me. She just wanted to help. Helping you or directing you." Dana pressed. Evan did not answer. He just put his head down. Then Dana turned her attention to the gallery. "We call Veronica Slate." Veronica stood up, smoothing her skirt. She walked to the stand with a defiant lift of her chin, but I could see the pulse jumping in her neck. "Ms. Slate," Dana said, "you have no legal relation to these children. You are a third party. Yet, you seem very invested in the outcome." "I care about Evan," Veronica said smoothly. "I hate seeing a good man destroyed by a toxic woman. Is that why you sent this text message to Mr. Hale 2 weeks ago?" Dana held up a blown-up screenshot. Quote, If she does not sign, you will lose the kids, and you know what I can do." Veronica's face drained of color. "What can you do, Ms. Slate?" Dana asked, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Fabricate another data breach. Plant more evidence." Before Veronica could answer, Dana played her final card. She handed a notarized letter to the judge. "Your Honor, this is an affidavit from the legal department of Kestrel Ridge Analytics. It confirms that as of this morning, Ms. Slate is the subject of an active investigation for vendor fraud and embezzlement. We submit that her interest in this custody battle is not the welfare of the children, but the financial control of the mother." The judge read the letter. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. When he looked up, his expression was thunderous. "I have heard enough." The judge declared, "The temporary custody order is vacated immediately. Full custody is returned to Mrs. Collins. Mr. Hale, you will have supervised visitation every other weekend until I determine the extent of your complicity in this scheme." He turned his gaze to Veronica. "Ms. Slate, you are banned from the courthouse. You are to have absolutely no contact with the Collins children or Mrs. Collins. If you violate this, I will have you in a cell before your feet touch the ground. Get out of my courtroom." I felt a rush of oxygen hit my lungs. I had done it. I had my babies back. As the bailiff escorted Veronica out, she passed by my table. She did not look defeated. She stopped for a fraction of a second, just long enough to lean in. "You think you won because you got the kids," she whispered, a chilling smile touching her lips. "You haven't even touched the money yet." The notification from the bank came at 2 a.m, piercing the quiet of my victory. Someone was attempting to bypass the biometric security on Aunt Louisa's trust. Veronica was not retreating to lick her wounds. She was doubling down. I sat with Silas in the war room, watching the attempts ping against our firewall. "She is desperate," Silas noted, tapping his screen. "But it is not just about the cash anymore. Look at the directory she is trying to target." He pointed to a specific sector of the drive. It wasn't the liquid assets. It was the archive. Veronica wanted to delete the list. The USB drive contained a detailed ledger of every person she and her shell companies had defrauded over the last 15 years. If the trust was fully probated, that list would become public record. She wasn't trying to rob the bank. She was trying to burn down the evidence locker. We decided to open the door just a crack. We coordinated with the Federal Financial Crimes Division to set a trap. We created a dummy gateway, a path that looked like a vulnerability in the system. But it required a physical signature from a legal guardian of the children to authorize the transfer of rights. Veronica took the bait instantly. She cornered Evan in the parking lot of his temporary apartment. Evan called Dana immediately after, his voice shaking so hard he could barely speak. She has a document." Evan stammered into the phone. "She calls it an emergency power of attorney. She says if I sign it, she can secure a trust fund for the kids and we can all walk away rich. But Dana, she looks crazy. I can't go to jail for her." "Then don't," Dana said calmly. "Do exactly what we tell you." The sting was set for noon at a rented conference room in a shared workspace downtown. I watched from a monitor in the adjacent room, flanked by 2 plainclothes agents and a representative from the bank. Veronica swept in, looking manic. Her perfect hair was slightly frayed, her eyes wide and feverish. She slammed a folder onto the table in front of Evan. "Sign it," she commanded, her voice tight. "Just sign the line. Evan, and this nightmare ends. We take the $80 million and we disappear." Evan held the pen, his hand trembling. "Veronica, are you sure this is legal?" The court said. "Forget the court," she snapped. "I am the one who made you, Evan. I am the one who gave you a spine. Do not fail me now." Evan looked down at the paper, then up at her. "I am not failing you. Veronica, I am finished with you." He dropped the pen. That was the signal. The door burst open. Veronica spun around. "Expecting me, but she found herself face to face with a federal agent holding a warrant. "Veronica Slate," the agent announced. "You are under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny." She didn't scream. She just slumped, the air leaving her body as the handcuffs clicked. As they led her past the glass partition where I was standing, she didn't look at me. She looked at the floor. The game was over. Evan signed a consent agreement that afternoon. He admitted to being coerced and agreed to a strict co-parenting plan with full legal custody reverting to me. I sat across from him in the hallway. I could have destroyed him. I could have pushed for criminal charges for his complicity. But I thought of my children. "I am not going to bury you. Evan," I said quietly. "Not for your sake, but because my children deserve a father who isn't a felon. But you will earn your way back into their lives. And you will never, ever let someone write your script again." He nodded, tears streaming down his face, and walked away. That evening, I sat in my new living room. The house was modest, but it was mine. I opened the final envelope from Aunt Louisa. The $80 million was never about being rich. Mara. It was a war chest. It was designed to protect people like us from predators like her. Build a shield. I knew exactly what to do. I would use the funds to establish a legal defense foundation for women trapped in coercive financial abuse. I would turn Louisa's legacy into a weapon for the voiceless. I walked down the hall to the bedrooms. My children were asleep, safe and sound. On the kitchen counter lay the approved petition for a name change. We were officially the Collins family again. I turned off the hall light, enveloping the house in a peaceful, heavy silence. The drama was over. The script was burned. For the first time in a year, the story belonged to me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment below, telling me which country or city you are in right now. Let's see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe to the Mia Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and if you want to support us even more, hit that hype button so this story can reach and empower more people.